Sometimes people will see something on Twitter and they'll be like, why aren't you guys covering this? Like, I saw it on Twitter. There was this picture on Twitter. Why aren't you covering it? I'm like, well, we haven't verified it.
Every time I open TikTok, there's another BlackRock conspiracy theory. How much of that influences your workflows?
That stuff is great for my business, for what I do, because I know because the algorithm serves it up to me.
I want to talk about this trend of CEOs being almost like celebrities, being out there as creators.
They're not going to bother me with this. And it helps in another way too, which is I can read all of that. And so I know what they're thinking, right? It saves me the time and trouble to sort of get to know them.
Lauren, do you think there's a fundamental lack of understanding of the difference nowadays between content and journalism? Is that part of the problem?
It's interesting because, we call our journalism content too. And we have to, right? Because we are competing for people's eyeballs or whatever are limited. They're a finite resource.
Are you feeling like you're being pushed more towards long form, very deep journalism as a differentiator?
No. I think if we only did long form journalism, we would lose people. And I think
Hello. We're here to talk about reporting on Wall Street. Super excited to have our panelists here today. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, and then I know we have a bunch of questions we want to get right into.
I'm Telis Demos. I write for the Wall Street Journal's Heard on the Street section. I write about banks, finance, money, insurance companies, crypto, all the above.
What don't you write about then?
I don't write about things that nobody wants to read about. That's what I try.
I'm Lauren Hirsch. I work for the Times and Deal Book, so business, policy, deals.
Cool. I want to start out by just thinking back the last few years of your careers. A lot has changed on Wall Street. It's become a lot more mainstream. I'm curious if when you guys were coming up in your careers early on, did you ever see anything like the meme stock movement coming, or how did that feel when you were in the trenches as that was going on as reporters with boots on the ground?
Well, you go first. Sure. I think I thought it was going to go away really quickly. I think we kind of thought it was a pandemic phenomenon. Honestly, I think we thought it would last a week, and then it being a month, and months, and then frankly now years. So I think there's been a lot of things, and honestly, crypto is like that too, where you think something's going to be a fad because it seems almost so outrageous, and then you're like, oh no, this is a very much a real phenomenon that is going to have real impacts. Companies genuinely need to, think about it. The president has his own meme stock, basically. It's so you have to. There's always this turning point where you're like, no, this isn't a fun, crazy week thing. This is a whole new chapter in Wall Street.
I think when I was coming up, it was around the time of it was sort of just before, into the era of the financial crisis, the 2008 great financial crisis. And so back then, I wouldn't say there was the same meme stock energy. As a matter of fact, it was after the dot-com bust. And so the whole idea of retail investing was sort of a joke, right? And when you become a financial journalist, the one thing that you learn is that you should never actually trade any stocks ever. Every single person you ask, every columnist who writes about these things you work with will tell you nobody should trade stocks. You should buy a diversified basket of S&P 500 index funds and blah, blah, blah. So you're very quickly sort of acculturated out of that, even though that might be the reason you got into it. That might be the reason that other people are interested in what you do. I would get asked all the time, oh, hey, you're doing business journalism. What stocks should I buy? And I would be like, you should buy a diversified basket of S&P, right? I wouldn't even answer that question, especially when I was coming up. But also I think the memes at the time, Wall Street was just sort of, I feel like you were around for part of that era, right? The Wall Street of that era was just memeier itself. Then you had the financial crisis, and that sort of took over the conversation. And now on the other side of it, I feel like Wall Street-y topics are just not that the whole conversation has moved away from actual Wall Street. And we talk very little about what actually goes on every day at Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan Chase or whatever.
Yeah, I do feel like it's the drama behind the scenes. It's better than Bravo sometimes. I know, Lauren, you've covered a lot of kind of dramatic changes at companies. And I'm curious if even you're picking up any differences in who your readers are over the last few years, who the audience is, who you hear from, and who's really following these stories closely. Has that changed at all?
I think DealBook's core audience is the same, which is, the most important people in business and policy. But what has changed is just social media gives us more access to more people. And so you sometimes, frankly, this sounds naive of me, but you forget who's reading your stories and you're just thinking of those people. Then I'll write something and I'll get all of these comments for all of these people. And then they'll really enjoy a story. I'm so fascinated that you found this interesting. And obviously it's nice to hear, but you kind of just realize how much broader your audience is because of social media, because of LinkedIn, frankly, it's a place I find readers too. Obviously, Twitter, now known as X. So people just are more engaged, I think, and able to be engaged than they were a decade ago.
Where do you get most of your reader feedback from? Comments on articles, emails,
I'm trying to think. It's a good question. Definitely emails. I see the emails the most. It's always fun when the story goes viral. It's not always fun when a story goes viral, but it's always interesting there was a story I did over the weekend about antitrust. And then so all the academics were fighting about it on Twitter, and there's just a fun insight into the things that make people tick. So I would say those. Although when something hits on LinkedIn, that can really. I don't know what you're.
Yeah, LinkedIn is good for that. For at least what I do.
Yeah.
LinkedIn is good for that engagement. I would say I still reader email is still the thing I'm most cognizant of because it lands in your inbox. And then and especially if something is then put on social media, right? If they do an Instagram post of your article, that gets you a very different kind of commentary. So I'm trying to look more at that and not just the reader email sort of.
What's the policy on writing back? Do you guys ever respond?
Yeah, they're
They're
encouraged,
encouraged, yeah.
And it's good, and it's sometimes you get tips, and a lot of the times I think about things differently as a result of reader feedback and commentary.
Yeah. They pay the bills essentially, right? I should be responding more to them than I do to, companies
You.
and public relations.
Sorry.
Because you guys don't pay my bills, the readers do. So they like us to engage more, though that's much scarier.
Yeah.
Because you never know what's going to come out of that a little bit.
But it's got to be fun sometimes to argue. Lauren, you brought up social media. I want to talk about this trend of CEOs being almost like celebrities, being out there as creators. I think a great example, if anyone followed Shopify's earnings last week, their president, Harley Finkelstein, is on the circuit. He was on CNBC. He was everywhere. He was on Instagram. He posted an X video recapping the earnings that I think 100,000 people have seen. So as these companies are going more direct, and I'll start with you, Telis, what role do you play as these companies are opening up a selfie video and saying, this is what happened?
I like it because I feel like it gives them. So sometimes when a company has a story to tell, they kind of view me a little bit as like a partner in that, hey, help us tell our story, right? And sometimes they're more artful and less artful about doing that. But when they have their own channel and content, it's they get that, they do it that way. And frankly, that's better for them because I'm never a good vehicle for that for many reasons, obviously. But so I like it when companies, when they have their own content channel that they're excited about, I'm great. They're not going to bother me with this. And when I go to them, it's and it helps in another way too, which is I can read all of that. And so I know what they're thinking, right? It saves me the time and trouble to sort of get to know them and say, hey, how do you tell your story, et cetera. I know that. I know what they're trying to put out there. And then I can, if I think it's smart or interesting, I can amplify it. If I think it's dumb or bad, I can say that. So, I don't mind them doing that.
I never thought about it that way. You're saying if they're more likely to control their own message on their own channel, they're less likely to try to control you.
Yeah, because I think we're reaching different audiences and people are coming to that content for different reasons. I guess the bad thing is maybe it muddies the media landscape and people see more advertorial or whatever kind of content, and maybe some hope, maybe people aren't sophisticated enough to know what they're looking at is essentially like a paid media. Or I think what's interesting, and I'll throw this over to you, is like when they start, I have not engaged with this, and I don't want to criticize. I've barely even looked at it, but like, this is not a commentary on it, but like Robinhood now has like a media arm, and they've hired like people I know to write for it. So I haven't really engaged with that, so I can't talk too much about it. But like that maybe that's another interesting development within that.
Yeah, just I agree with everything you're saying, and just like us to jump on to that particular point, like we're seeing even with VCs have created their own media arm. I think there's a lot of tension right now, particularly not just right now, but the past several years between the tech industry and media, and people wanting to take it into their own hands. And I think, obviously we're journalists. We think there's always a place for us that is different than what it is that they're doing, and they can do what they want to do. But I think the concern sometimes, and Telis kind of alluded to this, is that either the consumer gets confused or frankly, the CEO gets confused. Like, why aren't they just saying exactly what I want them to say in the way that I wanted to say it? Because that's the truth. It's like, well, that's how, like, you're defining truth how you want to define truth here. So I think that's where it gets tricky. I agree. It's great that they're trying new platforms, trying to put out their message. We're not at the vehicle to do that, but just as long as there continues to be an awareness that we are trying to achieve different goals.
And Lauren, do you think there's a fundamental lack of understanding of the difference nowadays between content and journalism? Like, is that part of the problem?
Yeah, I think that there is sometimes, frankly, a willful misunderstanding of the difference between content and journalism. That concerns
You were
me.
kind of shaking your head. What do you
No, it's
thinking?
it's interesting because, we call our journalism content too, and so I think, and we have to, right? Because we are competing for, people's eyeballs or whatever are limited. They're a finite resource, so we can't just act like we are over here in our safe little journalism bubble. I think that's, obviously the journalism business has some issues, and so I think to just say, oh, there's content and there's journalism, I think what I worry about, I'd love to think that way, right? Like that would be nice and safe and easy, but my organization and many others are trying to compete in that same media landscape, right? And you see, increasingly journalism bleeding into the content realm where, you have the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, like essentially like working on, the Netflix shows, right? Like developing programming, putting content out there that is definitively journalism and is different and better, in my opinion. But, we're all content in a way. So
we're defining content differently. So I agree with that. To me, the distinction I'm making is sometimes people will see something on Twitter and they'll be like, why aren't you guys covering this? Like, I saw it on Twitter. There was this picture on Twitter. Why aren't you covering it? And I'm like, well, we haven't verified it. Some guy may have said something because he heard something, but like we actually have to report it out. And so I think so I agree with you on but I think on the, like, we, for very good reason, don't always speak immediately. Like we have checks that we have to go through, and many people with platforms and with audiences don't have that same process. And I think sometimes that will honestly like lead to confusion for people who may not be kind of steeped in the way this all works.
I think that's interesting. And to your point about like, why aren't you? I put out content. Why aren't you, journalists looking at it? And I think because like there's we have part of our job. I think is to have good BS meters, right? And the longer you do it, the better yours is. And so if you put something in front of me, I can pretty quickly tell whether it's just sort of like meant to sort of persuade or just sort of like catch my attention versus something that is like thoughtful content coming from a company, right? Like, for example, like the slides, like something that an IR team would put out, right? Like that is something that I will look at and engage with because like just the rules of IR and financial communications are such that like these slides are telling me something about the company. Obviously the data is maybe cherry picked or the comparisons or whatever. So you can't just like buy it wholesale. But like that is something that if you sent that to me, I will take seriously and engage. If you send me a white paper, kind of depending on what it is, how it's put together, that might be something that I say, wow, you actually you paid some PhD who works for you to actually put together something very smart and put compelling data and charts in front of me that makes me think twice about something. If it's really just a marketing document dressed up as that's something different.
And Lauren, do you ever get story ideas from social media? Like, do you go on Reddit and like all of a sudden there's this little like something's going on and you dig in and something's there?
So, I don't know that I've gotten. People do. My colleague wrote this wonderful story a couple months ago about. It was a very sad story about a man who had killed himself, and there was like all of this, and there were a lot of questions about it. And there was all of this speculation on Reddit and on social media. And obviously my colleague did her own reporting, but there's people are out there like figuring it out. Like it's very valuable. And then I think even just getting it's a good way to get a mood check, a vibe check. Like people are mad, people are excited, sad, whatever the word is. It's a good way to kind of like an initial very quick temperature check.
And you cover financial services. Like, I feel like every time I open TikTok, there's another like BlackRock conspiracy theory. Like, do you ever see something like that and you're like, you know what, part of my job might be to like actually look into, how much of that influences your workflows?
I honestly, that stuff is great for my business or for what I do, because it gives it putting your finger in and trying to think about what are people interested in, what do people want to know about, what are people thinking about. I don't have to guess or rely on like audience data and stuff, which is sort of I know because the algorithm serves it up to me, right? They're like, oh, this person's interested in personal finance. Maybe he wants to buy a vending machine and have a passive income stream, right? And so I see a lot of that content, and so that gives me great stuff to write about. And so I think that while obviously misinformation and disinformation and the confusion of content and journalism and all that is not great for society all the time or great for our business, it's certainly like those things I think have on net improved what I do in the respect that like I know what people want. Like people are interested in BlackRock, right? Yep. Or Blackstone, which they often confuse. Yep. And I can make a living on just sort of writing articles about how they're different. And so it's like it's a great and by the way, do not buy a vending machine. I just want to make sure that everyone please go to WSJ.com and type vending machine and just read through that before you're tempted into it. Thank you.
Well, as you were talking, I was thinking because it seems like it's hard to compete on speed because other people don't have the same checks that you guys have. Are you feeling like you're being pushed more towards long form, very deep journalism as a differentiator because that's what others can't do?
No. I mean, I would say we at the Times try to very much understand that the world in which we are living. And I think if we only did long form journalism, we would lose people. And I think rightfully so. We want to do, and we still do, incredible long investigative pieces, but I think you can't be blind to the world that you're in. And we have a whole live team that's dedicated to effective. I don't know that we call it blogging, but effectively blogging, and experts who do these long form stories and can offer amazing insight and expertise on the spot. But I think we try to be very much aware of the world in which we're in and the way in which people consume content, because if people don't read long form stories, they may not read it is the issue.
Yeah.
I think we definitely have, I think barbell is the right word, where, so I write a lot about mortgages. And I would say the two most successful things I've written about mortgages or I've done about mortgages are a 45-second TikTok video that also went on Instagram, explaining the Fed cut interest rates. Why didn't mortgage rates go down, right? Or why are mortgage rates going to go up after the election, right? And just in 30 seconds, explain what happened with mortgage rates. You put up a chart, boom. that is a critical piece of consumable, thoughtful journalism for people to do. My other most successful thing about, most read thing I've written about mortgages was like a 2,000 word thing I did, which is like, how does a mortgage work? Like, what is a mortgage? Who gives it to me? What happens to it? What determines the interest rate that I'm offered, right? And I go into like the ridiculous nitty gritty of like the difference between, originators and, government-sponsored enterprises that guarantee your mortgage, and the spread between mortgage rates and treasury rates, right? And so that the thing that's going away is the like, well, I don't really have anything to say about this, but I guess I feel like I have to write about it, and we need to fill like page B42, and so I'll just go ahead and write 700 like kind of okay words that don't add anything and don't say anything, and somebody who doesn't know anything about the topic won't read, and somebody who does know about the topic will read and say, that was really silly, what a waste of my time, why do I subscribe? That is the thing that's got to go away.
All right, guys, we got time for one more. I am dying to know what you all would love to go deep on. Any topic, a person, a company, you have the access, you have the time. What are you picking? I'll start with you, Telis.
I'm going to pick a topic that I often save for this. And it's not very exciting, but it's like the most important thing that most of us will like do, today, which is retirement. I just think that it's like we're all facing this incredible thing that's going to happen to us, and we just do not have enough information, tools. The options in front of us are like changing very quickly, right? We're all going to have like annuities marketed to us very soon. How much does anybody know about that product? What decision? And you need to start making decisions about it when you're like, 19 basically, and they're going to be consequential. And while there is obviously like, there's no shortage of like that content, I think that we do it in a haphazard way. A lot of the way we write about that topic is like aimed at like, oh, you're 55, and it's like, what are you going to do with your IRA over the next couple of years? Like, it's too late. It's too late. You've already made your choices. And do we have enough things that actually talk to like 22-year-olds about the things? And also like the companies involved in that are like all gigantic companies that we just don't know. And they're new companies, Apollo is going to be like a major character in your retirement probably in 20 years. What do you know about what they do, the products they sell you, and how they write? And so I think that's something where if you said, Telis, you could write about one thing for the rest of your life, like maybe that's a reflection of my age, I'm starting to worry about it.
It sounds boring, but it's an existential threat, I guess.
Because it's boring, it's like, that's why it's like, you just need to drag it out of people. So I picked a topic for that.
Okay,
So maybe
I like
more
it.
interesting.
I like it. What about you,
Well, it's
Lauren?
funny. Literally, I had an answer backstage, and as you were talking, 5 other. Not that I'm going to be held to this, but I keep changing my mind. But so I'm going to give 2 very quickly. One is I would like to read the profile of Pop Crave, just because I don't know how Pop Crave has become this like Kamala Harris crushing, and they'll break news sometimes. So I kind of want to know what Pop Crave's deal is. And then this week, I would love to know what's going on in Mar-a-Lago as Trump is like figuring out who the Treasury Secretary is, who could be someone from Apollo, apparently. We'll see. So those are the 2 things on my mind.
Full circle. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. This is really awesome. Thanks, everyone.